I will start, as we have with the two other podcasts, Anu Wadekwa, which means the words that come before all else, from my father's neck of the woods. Whenever we come together in council, we give thanks for the things in creation that gives us life and the things that sustain us. When you look up at the nighttime sky, you are not looking up at cold, dark, empty space, as our invaders would have us believe. Instead, we are looking into the great spiral of creation, the living, breathing, vibrant body of Sky Woman herself, our great mother. For it is she that gives us spirit. From there, we give thanks to the beating heart of our grandmother Moon, for she controls the lifeblood in all things, for she gives us blood. We then give thanks to our Mother Earth, from where we all come from. No matter what language we speak, where we have come out of our mother, or what we think divides us. We are all family to one another, for she gives us body. We then give thanks to all women, who holds the sacred title of life giver. We give thanks to the newest baby girl, to the oldest grandmother, for in this life, they give us purpose and direction. We give thanks to the life force in all living things, not just in humans, but in all strains of life, those that crawl, swim above and below our mother, the energy that flows through. From there, we give thanks to all the waters. Since we are made up of 100% water, we are medicine to our mother, our father, our children, and they are medicine to us. We keep this in mind every day. We put our medicine out in a good way. We are mindful of this so our medicine doesn't get misused. We call on our ancestors and ask them to restore life givers to the natural seat of authority, every wampum or law, so they can manage once again our nations in peace, power, and righteousness, thereby restoring the balanced mind to the good. I will introduce myself traditionally. My name is Susan Reese Mashike. I am the daughter of Lillian, who carries the clan Mashike and the family name Mashike. I'm the granddaughter of Helen Samuels and the great-granddaughter of Mary Petoskey, all the way to Sky Woman herself. All my relations. Today, as we have in the last two podcasts, this podcast is ceremony. It is council. So we are going to just have the opening, and we will have a closing as well. I'd like to recap the last podcast that we had. We ended up with talking about our burial practices, the necessity for really keeping that in place, the dangers that go with engaging with the death care industry in this country, and the fact that our mourning when we do lose a loved one is so much shorter than if we were to combine the two, or just exclusively use our traditional burial practices. So we also talked about the education that really brought us to the table regarding Misty Upham, and the fact that I'm losing my train of thought here, just a second. The fact that Lily Gladstone and Carol Murray, both Blackfeet, have just received their doctoral degree from the University of Montana. One of the things that I failed to mention in this discourse is when we have someone like Nathan Chasinghorse, who is presently in jail as a sexual predator. We condemn people like Nathan, but we never go into the whys and wherefores. Nathan didn't become a sexual predator overnight. And that's true with all these others that have gone down that dark road. We have to look at our responsibilities as elders in particular. What happened to Nate? He didn't just start acting the way that he did overnight. Again, he was an actor. Again, he had a certain amount of celebrity. And it really goes to the whole theme behind these podcasts. When we walk into a career of film or theater, we now have to worry about what that does to us on a spiritual level and on a physical. Now, whatever unhealed wounds Nathan had, it certainly was not, it was added to when he became a celebrity. Dances with Wolves was a blockbuster, and it won several Academy Awards. And even though he was a young man, he carried that. In fact, I had the opportunity to meet Nathan only once at DQ University. He came and he actually said that he was being trained by a medicine person. Somewhere along the line, that didn't work out. And as a result, he ended up abusing women in horrific ways. And yet we have to go beyond what he's done. We have to know what happened to him. So that's all part of the forensic examination of missing and murder. It goes to the forensic investigation that we must look at to actually heal that wound, because it just keeps repeating itself. So I just wanted to bring those things up. And I also wanted to just give thanks to Misty Upham as a spirit, the Upham family, because she's the one that led us down this road into a much bigger picture that we didn't expect. I also would like to thank Natáyo for her brave stand within her identity as a woman, as a Blackfeet woman, telling her story and really bringing us to a greater, even bigger picture of Hollywood and missing and murder. I'm honored and pleased to talk with her, to hear more about who she is and what she'd like to see. So with that, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Auntie Susan, and thank you, Natáyo, for making the time to be here today on the Rematriation Station. Like Auntie Susan said, this is part 3 of the MMI Hollywood and MMIP series that we started back a few weeks ago. We're delving down the path of answers and accountability. I'm calling this episode Hollywood, MMIP, and Beyond. Rematriation Station is a source from the resource from the Rise and Love Foundation. My name is Vandy Crane, your favorite Wajashi Wamblanecha. I'm coming to you from here in Tewa territory. And just to remind everyone, the mission of the Rise and Love Foundation is to provide support to individuals, families, and communities who have been affected by past and ongoing traumas manifested as ancestral, historical, and intergenerational trauma, with the goal of becoming victors over our circumstances and creating safer communities through our experiences and creating resources for others to do so. So with that, I want to introduce Natáyo and give you a chance to introduce yourself, and we'll just carry on the conversation from there.
Hey, thank you so much, Vandy. Oki Nixaquax. Hello, my relatives. My name is Natáyo Weaselhead. I am located in Missoula, Montana, which is the original territory of the Salish people. I am a descendant of the Blackfeet tribe, and I was invited here by Vandy to speak with you all today about my experience and how I came to end up breaking my silence and exposing a predator in power who is still working for the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council in Browning, Montana. So thank you so much, Vandy and Susan, for having me here today. I'm really happy to be here with you both.
So good to have you with us. So Auntie Susan, what do you think is the ties that bind in everything that we've been talking about?
Well, I wouldn't call it a tie that binds, although I guess it depends on how you're looking at what a tie is. The tie in this discussion and in this bigger picture is silence, the conspiracy of silence. Since we began our concerns over how Misty Upham's name has not been spoken by many people who are in influence, certainly Blackfeet people who have, in my view, a responsibility to their own sisters to speak the name of Misty Upham and what happened to her. Now, in the first two podcasts, we examined my theory regarding why Lily Gladstone did not get the Oscar, and it's because Hollywood doesn't forget. And so she didn't win. And then I cited other examples of Native actors in films and high profile films that gave excellent performances. But since 1973, even though we've been nominated, we haven't won. And certainly with this last effort of Lily's, everyone was expecting her to win. In fact, the one that did win, Emma Stone, was completely blown away because she didn't even think that she was in the running at that point. Also, what makes it even more hideous is the fact that when Lily got up in front of everyone at the Golden Globes, we were hoping, there were many of us out here in Indian Country who were hoping she'd stand up and she'd say her name. And perhaps she would refuse the Golden Globe in the spirit of justice. The fact that Misty was raped at the Golden Globes in 2014, and several months later, she ended up missing and then murdered. We thought, well, she would be the one. In our investigation, we found out later that both her and Carol Murray, was going to get 2 honorary doctoral degrees from the University of Montana. Then our hope went to Carol. She lives on the res. She is a known Blackfeet scholar, but she too didn't say anything. No one to this moment has said anything in a really public way. In fact, we've been the most public there has been in terms of speaking her name, and this is after many years. Now, the family, the Upham family, is still in mourning. And a lot of it has to do with their inability to carry out their traditional burial practices, even if they wanted to. Also, when someone is missing and murdered, it usually has to do with crooked law enforcement who simply doesn't do their job or actually takes part in the obstruction of justice. So I think the tie that binds us is keeping our mouth shut and having those from outside threaten us if we do get up the courage and the energy to do so. That's why Natáyo's proclamation, her own proclamation of freedom, speaks above everything that we've talked about. And it really ties in with a theory that I have. I have this theory, it's not a fact, but because of the horrific corruption inside the Blackfeet Nation with this sexual predator who is the co-chair for the Blackfeet Nation, they're afraid. Both Lily and Carol are afraid to stand up and even speak the name of their Blackfeet sister. And it looks like they've been threatened in the same manner that Misty was threatened 10 years ago. And of course, Natáyo's life and what she has experienced ties all of that in together. The silence that we're forced into because we're afraid. So what we need to look at is to try and open up dialogue and ceremony so we can stand up as life givers. We have a seat of authority that we haven't taken yet. And certainly with Natáyo's shining example of doing exactly that. Everything that we've talked about in these podcasts goes to the fact that we need to take charge. We need to take responsibility. And elders in particular need to take responsibility. We have Carol Murray, who is an elder. I figured, okay, she's an elder. She's there. And yet she's probably more silent than anybody. So what we're also looking at the rewards, the delusion of reward, which of course in Lily's case it's just unbelievable fame and recognition. With Carol, it has to do with just staying alive, even though she's a noted scholar. I sense that she feels threatened too, not only with her life, but with her reputation and everything that she's achieved through white man's education. White man's education is also a tie in all of this. It contributes to the trauma that we all experience. And we're fooled into believing that if we go up a certain ladder, that somehow we can come back to our communities and fight for our people, when we're actually inside a system, a corrupt system that seeks out our total annihilation. We forget that we are still in a state of war. Now, certainly what happened with Genesis, White Bull, is an extension of that. They're really after our young people. They want all of us gone, but right now they're centering on young people. Genesis is an example of that. I have daily meditations through a healing that I received a while back, and my instructions were to speak with our elder brother every day. So this is day 19. Day 18, what the elder brother said, and it was a message directly to Genesis. And he said, the white man's education is a lie. It's coming from our elder brother. I added that apparently this assault on her happened because she has taken part in a system seeking out our total annihilation. And of course, she's going to be assaulted. So we have to look again at the bigger picture. We're brainwashed into believing that white man's education is going to get us there, and it's not. We have to start looking at our own sciences, our own education, our own traditional knowledge, to seek the love, to learn how to love again, how to live again. We've forgotten how to do all that stuff. We don't even know what peace is anymore. So I did my best, and so did Vandy yesterday, to get the word to Genesis. We haven't been able to speak to her directly. Maybe sometime in the near future we can. She is a young girl. And I'm hoping that we can all look at these things on a much bigger canvas than what we have. There's so many segues in seemingly different directions, but they all center on our annihilation, or even with our own people. Our own people are annihilating us on several different levels. And they're using education and recognition to do that. Now, in our last podcast, we talked about Lily. Lily's been, one of the reasons why we came together. And I don't mind saying this for a third time. Lily Gladstone is a drunk Indian. She's not drunk on alcohol. She's not drunk or stoned on drugs. What she's under the influence of is recognition and fame, a tidal wave that's international. When she got that doctoral degree with her Blackfeet stand-up headdress, who, by the way, wasn't even hers, we had another insight during the graduation commencement. Lily stood up and did the commencement address, and she admitted that the stand-up headdress, which is a Blackfeet tradition, wasn't even hers, belonged to Theta New Breast. Now, I don't know the protocols of this tradition, although I know rule of thumb. Whenever you have something sacred like that and it's yours, you're not supposed to give it to somebody else for anything. That's yours. You're not supposed to let anyone touch that sacred thing. Yeah, that's what happened on commencement. When Lily went up there, she admitted it wasn't even her headdress. Then she kept taking it off and on because the white man wanted to put some kind of medallion around her head. And the alarms went off. And I think that it's really important. We need to look into that. I would like to know what the protocols are. Now, I did a cursory research on the tradition, and it came from a woman's dream. And she was told she needed to learn songs to go along with this headdress. Now, I don't know whether Carol or Lily know those songs. Come to find out, I found out that I made a mistake. Annie Belcourt. I thought she was a student rep. She's not. She has her doctorate too, and I found out that she also is part of the Stand-Up Headdress Society. So when I sent her a special note apologizing to her, thinking that she was a student rep, telling her that when elders make a mistake, it's so much worse than if you or I, well, even you or I would make a mistake. Certainly, you with a student, someone younger than her, making the same mistake, it carries much. It's much more serious. And now I find out that she's part of the conspiracy of silence. We keep going down this path, and elder brother told us to let no stone unturned. That's precisely what we've been doing. We have been going down this path. We have been seeing these stones along the way. We turn them over, and here we find out even another piece of information we didn't know. Now, I'm hoping that the Upham family, it looks like that film, 11 Days, was not completed, although you don't usually produce a trailer to a film without doing the film first. But that's what it looks like. And if that's the case, that film must be completed in some way or another. It's started, it needs to be completed. Perhaps we can have a discussion on how we can get that done. And of course, the discussion with Lily about having memorial service for Missy, wonderful. But that's not going to be enough. I think that this silence has to be broken up. And I think, in fact, I know that we have to start speaking the truth, even if it means risking our life to do so. So there's a lot, I think there's a lot more work to be done on this. I just heard word from a friend of mine, her name is Wendy, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, on that side of the border, missing and murder. Manitoba, in particular, Winnipeg is the capital for missing and murder for Canada. Now the government is saying that they are going to be releasing what's called a red alert, like an amber alert. So every missing and murdered Native person, not just woman, who is missing will be up on some kind of jumbotron, and it'll be also communicated to cell phones and things like that, law enforcement. And what came out of that was, a lot of people don't know that there has been missing and murdered for many years in Winnipeg, where women, elders, children, and whoever else we don't know, their bodies are being thrown in the landfill, in the garbage dump. Native media isn't doing their job either. This issue has been going on for years, and they did some coverage about 2 years ago, but then they just let it go. Now, one of the perpetrators, Richard Skrbecki, white supremacist, has connections with sex trafficking in Europe, is on trial in Winnipeg. One of the people they knew, one of the women that they knew was dumped there by him. they found her head. Skrbecki cut off her head. Now, no one can tell me that the possibility, or even more of the possibility, that it is not happening here. So this whole thing is mushrooming out into areas we didn't even think of before. And so missing and murdered has taken on a brand new face. It's culminated and it's made worse by celebrity. And another worry we all have now is when our young people go into show business, we got to worry about them now too, because they're in show business. So the issue is, and the biggest issue, I guess, now that I'm just kind of talking it out, is silence and the fear of what may happen to us if we do speak the truth. The thing is as long as we have the secrets, and as long as they know we have the secrets, we're going to be killed anyway. And it doesn't matter if there's quote unquote a reason. It doesn't matter whether we keep our mouths shut or we sing like a bird. So all of us as life givers have to stand up. Even if we're part of the walking wounded, and many of us are, but our elders in particular have to start taking a greater role in speaking the truth and encouraging all those young people out there to do the same. We have an obligation to everyone that is in front of us, everyone that has not come yet. The future of the Indian people, and as my father's people say, those still underneath the ground. So there are a lot of things that we can do, but as I said in the previous podcast, we need a conference, having people come together. We need seers. We need medicine people who can come in, and once the people are opened up, that they can be healed and closed up before they leave the conference. We can't just have a number of people or a number of women and children and elders and young men who have already been missing and murdered come into a conference without seeking their care, their aftercare, once they talk about what happened to them. And then we start to analyze this stuff. What are the common denominators in all these things? The predators, who are our own people. And I will say this publicly for the very first time. I was told about this about 10 years ago when I first got involved with a missing and murder case that happened about 10 years ago. The woman told me that many times it's our own people. Our own people do this. And I told her just a couple of years ago, she came to a missing and murdered event here in Sacramento. I said, until this is out in the open, until this is on the table, we have to face what we do to ourselves. We also have to start looking at all the young people, the children that are being abused, that are being hurt, that are being wounded. So then they grow up to do something like what happened to Natáyo. This guy, what happened to him? I want to know what the hell happened to him and who was around him to create this kind of walking monster who, again, is enjoying a certain amount of celebrity himself. as to the position that he now holds. May not be Hollywood, but it has the same effect. What happened to him? Who hurt him? We have to ask those questions and do whatever we can to heal that open, gaping wound that all of us have on one level or not, you know. I was sexually abused when I was a child. I don't remember a lot of it, remember some of it. And I'm still working on it. And I'm 74 years old. It's something, it's a work in progress. I'm still learning who I am. The words that come before all else, that's my father's people. And so I read off sheets of paper because I haven't memorized it yet. I haven't learned the songs. And yet I'm bringing to the table my own family medicine. And so now I'm hoping I can continue to move forward and do the work that I always have. But I've been doing this work with both hands tied behind my back. Our wounds disable us. Once we come out and our hands are untied and we stand upright, nothing but the Creator can stop us. So it's the life giver on all strains of life that is hoping for the human life giver to take a stand and to do whatever necessary things that we need to do to heal this, to not look at that person and just condemn him. Now, his victims may not be able to get near him, nor should they, especially if they're still unhealed. But how about the rest of us? The Blackfeet Nation has certainly a responsibility to its own, to her own people. And you've got a corrupt IRA government. It's coming off the heels of a huge funding mismanagement where Blackfeet people have gone to jail. And this predator, I found out during that particular scandal, was the secretary for the Blackfeet Nation. Well, then he just got a bump to being the vice chair. Now, we all know in government or in organizations, the secretary is the most powerful officer there is because they're the ones that receive and disseminate information. They know the underbelly. So we're still wondering what he, or at least I wonder, what part he took in this corruption. And I don't know whether that will ever be settled. I know that right now there isn't any effort by any other Blackfeet people to tell the truth. And it's Natáyo is like the most wounded. Now she can stand up, so can the rest of them. So I'm going to continue to work on this. Every time we think we're finished, we find out we're not. And so as long as I'm supposed to go, I will go, and our elder brother is right with us. And he said that, I asked him this morning, I said, well, did Genesis get the message? And he told me, he said, yes, she got the message. However, it hasn't penetrated her. It hasn't settled. It hasn't ripened. So as a result, it's going to take time. Well, Genesis, what kind of name is Genesis? It's Christian. Okay, it's safe to assume that she has a Christian name. That's a problem when we're dealing with our own traditions. We can't do it both ways. Those of us who've tried have died. We have to make a choice. We can't be Christian and traditional at the same time. Two diametrically opposed philosophies, ways of life, ways of looking at things. So Genesis is going to have to eventually make a choice. She can't ignore that kind of discrepancy, because that's what it is. Very likely, if she does make a decision to practice her traditions, she's going to have to change her name and probably go to her elders in order to help her do that. Plus, I'm finding out that her mother is military. It's war. We can't be at peace when we have war in our life. We have to make a decision. Can't have both. And so there's a problem there. And that's what I think our elder brother was talking about this one. It's going to take a while. But because the message is from him, it's a powerful message. It's very simple, very brief. It's not complex. But it's a decision that she herself will have to make. And no one has the right to make it for her. So the message has been sent. She has received the message. And now it's up to her to make a decision. There was tremendous support for this young woman. There was, I was within 24 hours, it just exploded. So I know that we're ready to change. We're ready to change and take on our responsibilities to return to the sacred. And all that means is to return to ourselves, who we truly are. And that's all strains of life. So I'm hoping that these discussions will encourage others to do the same. Also, I'm hoping that the university, I'm not through with the University of Montana yet. I haven't written that letter to the president yet. And I do want to know more about that headdress society. I want to have some facts behind me instead of just feelings that what happened during that commencement was totally wrong. And of course, in Carol's commencement speech, she had to take off her headdress, but she allowed a white academician to handle it. Now, in other traditions, when something like that happens, you can get yourself killed. I mean, native traditions in medicine is nothing to fool around with. There are instructions that are given in the care and feeding of that headdress. That headdress is alive. I don't know the nature of its aliveness. I'm not Blackfeet. In fact, I didn't even know about this tradition until I saw the news feed on Lily getting this headdress from the Headdress Society of Blackfeet. I'm really concerned about her life. We've gotten to a point where we don't even know when our heart is broken, our own heart. We've numbed ourselves to the things that we need to be very much aware of. How can we mend a broken heart if we don't even know it's broken? When we've accepted things that we're being told. And The last note I want to make about this is the University of Montana, and I spoke about this in the last podcast, but I'd like to expound on that a little bit more. I went to the University of Montana website, to the theater and dance department. They were promoting the fact that Lily Gladstone was their graduate, was their Indian, okay? And that one of the instructors, Dr. Bernadette Sweeney, became Lily Gladstone's mentor. Now, when you went to the website, in big, bold letters, Bernadette Sweeney, mentor to Lily Gladstone, in big, it took up most of the page. And I said, what the hell is that all about? So if you step back and you look at it, it's the commodification of Lily Gladstone. Everything that has happened, from Hollywood to her own people, to the innocent students that don't know what's going on, and to those who do know what's going on, is that they're keeping their mouth shut. We're hurting ourselves when we do these things. And so the University of Montana succeeded in commodifying Lily Gladstone, a human being, a life giver, alive. They're not even waiting till she dies. They put a for sale sign on her head. She doesn't even know that. She doesn't even look at that. You know, it's so far removed from her, it's not funny. Although I'm guessing here that our effort so far has actually hit the nerve, because the next week I went back to the theater and dance department, and Bernadette Sweeney's name and advertising was taken off, even though they did maintain a little bio on Lily, and the fact that she was a student at the University of Montana. It went back to normal as far as advertising, but it really went out of control with Bernadette Sweeney using Lily Gladstone to feather her own nest. Now, Lily's not going to look at it that way. She's not going to look at the fact that she's being used or that she's got a big for sale sign on her head. But I hope that one day she does realize this, because we're making it as plain as we can with the resources that we have, the little resources that we have. And I can feel it. I can feel it every time we put out podcasts, every time we talk about this stuff. I can feel people have received it, but they leave their bodies because they can't handle it. So our only hope is that when we speak the truth, eventually it will take. And I want to thank you, Vandy, for all the hard work that you've done in spite of what's happened in your life, because that hasn't stopped you. And it shouldn't stop any of us. And my obligations as an elder, I mean, I really wish I could do more. And maybe at some point in the near future I can. But we're facing the end of time. It's another thing that Lily Gladstone, Leo DiCaprio, and all the rest of them don't want to face, the fact that we're facing the end of 531 years of darkness. If you don't walk in peace, you will be destroyed. That's for everyone, every human being on the planet. We all have to make our choice, about our individual choice on that. And I'm told that the women, so far everything is coming true. The women of the world is leading the way to the path for peace.
Mm.
We just have to keep moving forward. And our elder brother's going to flip the switch. There'll be 3 days of darkness. Tells me that the 3 days of darkness won't happen now, but it's coming. And once the satellites go down, once electricity is gone, we're not supposed to be in the city. We're actually supposed to be in our homeland, if we can make it. If we can't make it, we're supposed to go up, which is mountains. And all of us we're going to have to walk. All of us will. If you got a car, if you got money, you can only go so far. You got a plane, you got to land the plane, because you're not going to be able to go any further. So we're all going to be faced with this. And we're told that we have to remain calm. And whatever we haven't done with ourselves, it's going to be taken care of. We're going to be getting new instructions. We're going to be healed. Our spiritual vibration will be raised. We're told that we're going to get new foods. There are going to be new animals. A lot of the old animals that have gone extinct are now coming back, as everybody knows. So we got a lot to look forward to in spite of what we're looking at this precise moment. At the same time, we're supposed to do everything that we can for as long as we can and be in the here and now and do whatever we would normally do without even knowing any of this. But we do have something to look forward to. Our broken heart, once we find out that it is broken, we do everything we can to heal it. But if we don't get that far, Creator will take us the rest of the way, providing that we make the decision to walk in peace in spite of what's happened to us. So that's about all I have. I certainly would like to know. I'd like to hear more about Natáyo's story, if she can tell us. And I do have a message for you, Natáyo, from our elder brother. He said that we have to treat you like a delicate flower that has to go into hiding until she can come out and bloom again. So we have to take care of you. So that's the instructions that we've gotten from our elder brother. So if there's anything that is said, anything that we misspeak, you need to tell us right away so we can correct it. And we need to protect you, whatever we've got. All my relations.
Hey, Wopila, Marlena, Auntie Susan. You brought up so many amazing points and things for us to think about. And before we pass the imaginary mic to Natáyo, I just wanted to recognize all the ways in which we can be wisdom keepers. And I had put the podcast on yesterday. I did go to Farmington. My girl Tatanka Scully and I went up to Farmington to go support Genesis White Bull because my daughter's named for the same chief their family is descended from, Chief White Bull, and they shared, same homelands, and they wanted to go support. And it was really beautiful to see so many people show up to support youth. And Washdewi was holding a sign that said, "Don't fear Genesis, the aunties are here. Have no fear, Genesis, the aunties are here." And that's what I really envisioned for Natáyo and all of our women and children, my girls, my girl came out about what happened to them, and we're having to battle it out in court to protect them. You know, so that's the vision I have, that all women from all nations will rise and come support the ones that have the courage to be on the front lines. And thank you for acknowledging my sacrifice. I myself am a college graduate. I did go the colonial route. It took me 14 years to get a 4-year degree, and I was banned from walking across the stage because of an historically accurate academic paper I wrote. So I know the pain that Genesis went through, except as an orphan, I didn't have that support. Out of all my accolades that I've ever received, my favorite accolades are the fact that my identity is invalid. I haven't been able to get on an airplane since 2005. House was burnt down. Our house and Rise and Love Foundation headquarters were burnt down on April Fool's Day 2023 for advocating for MMIP families. And one of the founding members of the International Indigenous Youth Council told me that I'm the living embodiment of Dear Woman. Those are my favorite accolades. I have nothing to show for it except the respect of the people, and, you know, hearing acknowledgement from elders. That's my other favorite accolade, and the gratitude from other sisters. That's what I go hard for. You know, that's why I'm a warrior. And I'll keep showing up as long as there's breath in my body and life in my bones. Like I tell my daughter, I'll show up for the truth, and I'll show up for other survivors. So with that, I want to ask Natáyo specifically, if you're willing to share with us, what was the process that led you to breaking the silence? And what internally, share everything about that if you're willing to, because that's, as Auntie Susan said, the common denominator. That's what keeps these cycles of oppression and abuse continuing.
Thank you. That's such a powerful question. You know, what first comes to my mind was, in order for me to break the silence, I had to start telling the truth to myself first, because I was not willing to look at my own truth for, you know, years. For over 10 years, you know, I went through sex trafficking, and that whole time, you know, I was filled with self-blame and telling myself that it was because of my choices, or that I was just broken, or you know, it was you know, me that was a whore, and that was all I was good for. So I was living this, you know, this lie inside of my own spirit and mind and body. And you know, after I was able to really leave that abusive relationship, the first thing that I had to do was tell that truth to myself. And I wasn't really prepared for that, but, you know, that I had never reported any abuse or sexual assaults before. And I think that something about this being so intertwined with, you know, the spiritual abuse that he was also putting me through, just sort of really was it was what gave me the momentum and the courage to do that, to go forward and decide I'm going to press charges. And you know, knowing that he was there in the Blackfeet community as, you know, a leader, in a position of power, and also a ceremonial man. And knowing that that was still happening, that he was still taking up those spaces, that there were other women that didn't know what I knew about him, bothered me. It shook me out of my silence. And so when I did go to report this, I was still really hesitant. You know, there was a big part of me that was still battling that fear. And also there was a lot of, you know, I guess self-doubt and imposter syndrome, you know, that I didn't believe that I was supposed to be considered sacred, or that I was worthy of justice. Those kinds of things were things that I was really struggling with. Even as I was setting up a meeting with the detective and going through the first interviews, you know, there was this deep panic inside of me that was, you know, telling me to do all kinds of things, you know, from kill myself to go back to my abuser, to just stop, just be silent and go away and disappear and just look the other direction, you know, and move on and try to just deal with it the best I can. And all of that was struggles that I had to overcome. And something that really broke through at that time was when I was going through the interview with the detective. She started asking me about some of my past experiences that were used to manipulate me. And as I explained some of the things that I had experienced, the detective started using the words sex trafficking, you know, and saying that sounds like trafficking. And that hit me in such a way, it kind of shook me to my core, just with that reality and that truth. And I had to look at it. I had to really look at it, along with everything that I had endured in the recent abuse. You know, it all just tied together. You know, what he was pushing me towards was sex trafficking, and thankfully he wasn't able to get that far. But you know, if I hadn't really paused at that time, you know, because I could have bowled over the detective mentioning sex trafficking to me. I could have just pushed that to the back of my mind once again. But I think just taking that time to really stop and say, that's a truth I can't ignore any longer. And if I really want to take my own healing seriously, if I want to take my own justice seriously, I have to pause and look at that. And so I think that really telling yourself the truth, being able to get to that place where you see the truth of what is taking place, whether it's within yourself or within your family or within your community or your nation or human family. I think that we need to start with the truth of that. And so many people I think that that is such an uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable to agonizing for them. And I think that being able to face it takes a bravery that we have not encountered within ourselves in a very long time. So yeah, I think that, you know, in order to break that silence and to become truth tellers outwardly, we have to become truth tellers inwardly.
That's very powerful. And as I mentioned in our previous conversation, when I hear your story, I hear my story, even though our details are so different. I didn't realize I was a survivor of trafficking until I got my counseling degree and was working with other survivors. And I was developing a program for human trafficking survivors, and I didn't even identify as one yet. I was so afraid to come out with the details of the story because it was familial child trafficking. My family wasn't. And I, you know, for so long, I carried that rage inside of me, and it almost destroyed me. We're conditioned through our boarding school trauma, through our ancestral traumas, to hate ourselves already, and then to internalize that shame. And then instead of using that rage and shame as energy that can be used to change the status quo, we destroy ourselves, or we destroy each other. Like Auntie Susan was mentioning, the fact that our own people are doing this to each other. So yes, telling the truth to ourselves is so hard. And I really appreciate that you brought up how agonizing it is. It is completely agonizing. I mean, talk about dark night of the spirit, and then we have, you know, our ceremonies where we're supposed to be able to go to be able to reconcile these things within ourselves. But if our ceremonial spaces are made to be unsafe, where do we go to reconcile these things? So there's so many things to unpack. But this is where we start, with those honest conversations, with the direction of an elder who, I don't think I fully expressed my point earlier, that really want to honor you, Auntie Susan, as a wisdom keeper, because being able to change those wounds into wisdom is an extraordinary power. And even if we don't know all of our songs and we don't have our language, and we, you know, there's the language keepers, there's the ceremony keepers, there's the weavers, there's the beaters, but the power to change wounds into wisdom and pain into power is just as powerful as language. And what is language if we carry the language but we use it to hurt the people? Or we carry the ceremonies but we use it for personal gain or to hurt others, or all these things. So in our own way, all three of us here are those wisdom keepers. We're using those experiences to bring wisdom and to bring truth. And when we have that courage to speak truth, it changes everything energetically. We don't even have to go out to fight those battles on the front line the way that I'm used to. And that's something I've had to learn as a woman, is I need to take a step back. And Auntie Susan reminded me, you know, you don't need to be sun dancing. That's a warrior's way. You know, you've done your part. Step back and know your purpose now. And I feel like we're all honoring that in a way that is authentic with the truth of our own experiences and what our communities and the world needs at this time.
I have a question to Natáyo. At what phase is this investigation at this point? How close is it to the DA actually filing charges?
I would say it's not close. It's been frustrating. You know, this investigation started in July of 2022, and you know, the predator Lauren Monroe Jr. was not even interviewed or questioned until July of 2023. And the last meeting that I had with prosecutors was January 5th, 2024. And I had been, you know, waiting since he was interviewed in July to just get word of what had come of that and the prosecutor's decision going forward. And, you know, the detective, Connie Bruckner, here in Missoula County, she had been telling me that the prosecutors were reviewing the case and they would be getting a hold of me soon to give me their final review. And at the end of that phone call, when she let me know that was about mid-December, the detective retired. And so she's no longer even available. And I ended up calling the prosecutor's office shortly after that to see where they were at with things, and spoke with prosecutor Ryan Mickelson. And that was in December 2023. And you know, he had not reviewed the case yet. He didn't know who I was. My name wasn't even on the case file. And so, you know, we set up a meeting for January, and I showed up to that meeting alone. I didn't have my attorney with me. I didn't have an advocate with me. It was an excruciating meeting, just trying to get through these two prosecutors, Ryan Mickelson and Brielle Blonde, who were just going over all of the problematic areas of the messages. And all of the messages, you know, it's you know, a lot of it is just him telling me to do things, giving me orders and me following, you know, him getting, you know, finding ways to have me participate in these things. For example, he would become obsessed with, you know, putting a tracker on my phone. And so he would, you know, say, find a good phone tracker. And I would then start having to look up, you know, do a Google search and find a phone tracker for him. And so then they would, you know, or if, you know, he would, you know, say something sexual that he wanted to do to me, like raping me with other men, you know, I would comply with that and say, you know, you're right, I deserve it. And that compliance was coming from such a wounded place, such a destroyed place that he put me in. He put me in that place. And so they would take messages or evidence like that, and then they would say, you know, well, it's, you know, similar to BDSM. how do we know that he knew what he was doing? How you know, how do we know that that he didn't know it was a game? And so then they would talk about, BDSM, and they would talk about all of these things. And, I don't have a history of BDSM. I have a history of being sex trafficked and sexually abused. But they kept on bringing stuff like that up, in it. And so I would have this, this mental battle, trying to find the right words to bring it back to the place of them being able to actually see me as a victim. And they would try to say things, like, we know that obviously something, what he did to you is wrong, and we can see that, but there are these problematic areas. And so, that whole meeting left me in a traumatized state for a few days. I couldn't even think. I couldn't put my own thoughts together. I stayed in bed and I cried. And that's about all I could do, was cry. And I remember, just, if I could even speak, I would just pray to Creator and just ask over and over and over, am I even Nitsitapi? Am I even Blackfeet? Am I even one of the people? Am I loved by you? Am I seen by you? Am I human? And after that, I made the decision to, I'm not going to talk to my attorney, because she's going to tell me all the ways that I need to be careful. I'm not going to go back and try to find an advocate. I'm not going to try to talk to anyone, because everyone is going to tell me all the things that they think I need to do. But what I knew in my heart, in my spirit, everything within me that I needed to do was tell my story. And to break my silence. And so I sat down, and it took me about a month after that to write my story completely. And it was so long because I wanted the Blackfeet people to know who I was, because I was adopted away from them. None of them knew who I was, but everybody knows who Lauren Monroe Jr. is. And he's so honored in that community. And for that year and a half, I watched him be lifted up continuously. He was in newspaper article after newspaper article, not just Indian country news, not just Native news, but he was in our main local news here in Montana, for sacred things, like releasing our sacred buffalo for the first time. He was praised for that. He was put in a documentary for that. All of these things that I was just witnessing that were tearing me apart internally. And so I just knew that people needed to know who this man really was. And that if I continued to work with my attorney and go through, all their hoops, they would continue to silence me. And, the prosecutor left it at, if I have new evidence, I can bring that to a new detective. If other victims come forward, we can go to a detective and they'll consider that as new evidence. But other than that, nothing. You know, I was talking to my attorney after that, and I just, you know, I said, I need to find a new attorney. And I started to try to open a civil case. And so I've been, you know, it was just this last week I had my last conversation with my attorney, and I was just trying to get her help moving forward. And she, at the end of the call, she just said, okay, well, you know, my boss is really getting on me because of, you know, cases that are open, files that are open for too long. So, you know, my boss really wants me to close this file. And I was just completely taken back, you know, and just caught off guard. And she said, so I'm gonna go ahead and close your file now, and I'll send you that letter. And within an hour, I had that letter of her closing my file. And I thought, that's the fastest thing she's done in over a year. And that hit me very deeply too, because then I just, you know, I had nothing. And so I you know, I just started crying and praying again. And luckily, you know, I got into a headspace that was pretty stubborn. I didn't want to quit. And so I just kept on saying, all right, who am I going to call next? Who am I going to call next? And I ended up calling the Montana Trial Association, and the woman who answered the phone was going to kind of give me the runaround. She was going to try to get me off the phone pretty quick. And I just interrupted her and started telling her my story. And she listened to me for about 15 minutes. And then she said, you know, she asked me where I was located. And she said, can I put you on hold for a second while I find some information? And she came back a few minutes later, and she had the name of an attorney, civil attorney here in Missoula. So I just recently followed up with him, and we just had our first conversation just this last week. And so, you know, that's where I'm putting, you know, my energy, is just to start a civil case. I'm also still, you know, trying to see if there's a way that I can reach any more of, you know, Lauren's victims that are out there, because I know since releasing my video, there were a few comments from people, you know, that were just saying, you know, we've seen this behavior before, basically. And so I know there are other women. I knew it, and he also, I mean, he pretty much admitted to it himself, even in messages, you know, at one point during a conversation when we were talking about the way he was controlling me and abusing me. And he just said, if you don't work out, I'll just find someone else. I know how to do this to girls like you. And so, you know, that told me everything right there. That was when it really hit me, you know, that I have to get away. I have to get away alive. And, you know, other women will get hurt if I don't say something.
Well, there are, I've got strategies in my head as you're talking, but it's really for another time. Maybe we can have a conversation just about that. Okay. Also, this really deserves to be on the federal level, not in Missoula, Montana, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also considering, and I don't know whether your attorney, well, you're dealing with a civil litigation, but if there's room there for a criminal litigation, it would be a grand jury investigation. I'm recommending that the same thing to Cole Brings Plenty family. They need to look at a grand jury investigation to take it out of local law enforcement, who many times are complicit in all of this, and a lot of foot dragging, a lot of deception. And even when they bring in the FBI actually joins in the foot dragging and the complicity and all, and everything that goes along with it. But I think that there is that possibility that you may want to consider. I think that the criminal stuff has to be handled. And then the civil stuff, there's different levels of evidence with civil litigation. With criminal, it's a matter of what they call clear and convincing evidence. And if you were to get a jury trial, it would have to be beyond reasonable doubt kind of evidence. That's a whole other thing. And I'm just expressing my feelings about this. It's not a fact. But I think that the Missoula criminal justice system just ain't, they didn't tell you that they weren't capable of handling something like this. Plus, they've got to be realists. This is Indian country. Hello. They've got to have some, at least, secondary knowledge of criminality in Indian country. They sniff around, and we talked about this in the last podcast. These people sniff around with something like this, they're going to be killed. They're going to be taking a risk. They're not about to tell you that they're going to be taking a risk. So they play with you, they re-victimize you in the whole process. And frankly, you probably have a standing, as they say in the law, for a complaint with the State Attorney General's office against the county of, what county are you guys in?
Missoula County.
Okay, in that county, and you can file a complaint with the State Attorney General. Now, also, your healing is number one above anything else. Vandy and I was dealing with a missing and murdered case, and the family went to all kinds of healing. They had all kinds of therapy. Okay, but as you probably already know, is that when we get healing, when we go through ceremony for healing, we have instructions of how to be after the healing, so it doesn't come back. Okay. Now, if you know anything about Native spirituality, and I'm talking about this kind of stuff in general, we all have instructions after our healing. You have to do this, this, and this. Number one, you have to forgive people that hurt you. If you don't, it will come back. And of course, you're absolutely right. If you would have kept your silence, somebody else would be hurt. In the very least, he is aware the spotlight is on, and he is not going to get a new victim at this point. He's probably going to go back to his old victims if he's going to act out. But no new victims. Your willingness to speak the truth has already, excuse me, has already possibly prevented another victim. So I wanted you to take that into your heart. That what you're doing isn't just for yourself. It's for all the people that will come after you. Indian-wide adoption and residential boarding school treachery, because that's what I call it. Academicians call it the boarding school experience. It's not that. It's the treachery. So I call it as I see it. It's boarding school, residential school treachery. And that has the same markers as Indian-wide adoption across the board. Not only do you make mistakes, you are a mistake. You are a mistake. It's me. That's you. We have to heal ourselves from what we're being told, and that's all part of that trauma that keeps coming up. Well, now this is divided now into 3 parts by a young woman. She's now at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and she did a lecture in a class that I was in at UC Berkeley when I went back a few years ago, and she talked about that trauma. She said there's 3 parts now clinically in Indian Country. The first part, the first kind of trauma is historical trauma. That's DNA trauma. That's our memory. Okay, that's what we're born with. Okay. Then there's multi-generational trauma, and what that really is taking that trauma and then passing it down to your children. The third kind of trauma is cataclysmic. Cataclysmic is witnessing your own relatives dying right in front of you. Whether it's with a gun, whether it's with suicide, whether it's with what's happened to you, you have experienced the worst kind, which is called cataclysmic trauma. So when we look at this stuff, what we name it is so important, is so very, very important. Up until about 15 or 20 years ago, the DMS, I think it's called the Psych Bible. I always forget the diagnostic something. And in that reference book, it's a huge, thick book. It talks about psychological symptoms, markers. And up until 15 or 20, no, I guess it was 20, maybe 25 years ago, the psychological community looked at us and said that we were schizophrenic. We had 8 out of 12 markers. Well, about 20, 25 years ago, they removed all of it. They thought we were crazy. Okay. Now, I've had to go to counseling off and on. My PTSD gets triggered every once in a while. In fact, it was triggered here a few years ago with the neighbor right next to me. They were drunks, they were violent people, and they were throwing their bodies against the wall. I had to call 911. They were threatening me. They were threatening my safety. And so I ended up having to file a restraining order against them. And I went to counseling. And the first thing that they ask you when you go to counseling in a non-Indian Western medicine setting is, do you hear voices? Okay. Guess what I said? No. I didn't want them to focus in on me being a possible schizophrenic. I mean, so I always tell tribal people, don't say anything about our spirituality except very general kind of stuff. Things that you think that they're going to accept as part of the culture. You get into the meat and potatoes of Indian spirituality, they're going to put you somewhere else. You're going to be re-traumatized in some way or another as a result. So that's what I tell a lot of tribal people. So, but there are options for you, Natáyo. In the white man's court that you have a trial. And I'd like to talk to you about that so you can do your own investigation. So your decision is what I'm telling. Your decision is what is coming from the inside out, not from the outside in. And we can talk about that stuff. I think this whole thing should be on the federal level, number one. I don't know whether this attorney is equipped for that or not. I would also suggest to you the Center for Constitutional Rights out of New York City. It's the organization that William Kunstler started with a number of other legal scholars, 40, 50 years ago. He defended Leonard Peltier. He was the first lawyer defending him. And they're still representing Native people. They also represented Yvonne Swan Monroe. Her case that went international. Her decision, the Monroe decision, regarding the trauma as women, what we do. She killed her rapist. Okay. This is back in the 70s, and her case went for 9 years through the Center for Constitutional Rights. And at the end, her decision, the Monroe decision, and I think I'll send you a copy of that statute there, gives a victim, especially with what you're dealing with, what Vandy's dealt with, a legal precedent that says that when we kill our rapist, we're guilt free. The psychological doesn't matter whether it's imminent danger or not. It sticks with you. That piece of statute actually protects women under those circumstances. I don't know whether it could be used in your case or not, but it's a landmark decision. And when the Longhouse was assisting Piper Lewis, a young Black woman who killed her rapist in Iowa, her case went on for about 3 years. She killed her rapist when she was 14. And we sent that decision to the lawyers. Now, they never got back to us, but I suspect they used it. She's free now. She's now 17. Maybe she's 18 now. But there are options for you. But the most important thing above the legal stuff is your own healing. Taking things in due course, being good and kind to yourself, and letting people know we're going too far. You need to tell us. You need to bring it to our attention, because we don't want, even though we have similar experiences, we don't walk in your shoes. So we have to recognize our limitations, even though we've got a lot of similarities, and there's that biblical cord that binds all of us together. But I can tell you without a doubt, the Blackfeet Nation of Browning, Montana is in extreme crisis with everything that we've talked about. Now, the Blackfeet Nation are also in Canada. So I'm getting some contacts from them. I want them to know what we're talking about. I want them to know how much trouble the Blackfeet Nation is. And it's part of them. It's part of who they are too. And even though they're across the border, they need to. But I'll keep in touch with you on that. This is an ongoing issue. I don't know what other stones we're going to uncover here. So far, we've uncovered a whole lot. This whole thing is morphed out way beyond speaking Misty Upland's name. I mean, that was the big incentive. You know, we just, you know, the Indian Country just didn't, was trying to prompt Lily at first to say the name, and she wasn't saying anything. But as we uncovered everything, we still haven't been able to get the Upham family in public. See, they're still writhing from this, and I don't care what excuse they're using. It's allowed because they're simply not ready, or else they'd be here. But that doesn't mean that they won't be. And I'm hoping that they will find a way to speak the truth, just the way that you have. It's been festering for 10 years now. And I've caught to some of the details of that. You know, Lily had this experience with Harrison Ford, you know, Star Wars guy. And what he did is she was standing in line and go pee. Or she said something different, okay? She had her multi-million-dollar Gucci dress on. The idea of these people going to an event like that, standing in line to go pee, you know, kind of lessens the, you know, the stellar of the event. Well, she was waiting in line. He comes up and he shoves all these other people out of the way so she can get into the bathroom. So when they announce her name for the Golden Globe, she won't be in the bathroom, or she won't be in a very embarrassing position when they mention her name. Okay. So they had an exchange. Variety, which is an age-old entertainment newspaper, did a story on that exchange. They made a big to-do about it. Well, I'm kind of putting two and two together. This is to lessen the reality of what happened to Misty 10 years ago in that bathroom. So there is an effort, there is a concerted effort to lessen, to dismiss the realities of what happens to us on your level, on Misty's level, on Lily's level. Lily doesn't even know. She doesn't even have any idea what they've already done to her. She's been victimized, but she's not looking at it that way, and neither is her family. So I don't know whether that's going to ever change, but I do feel that what Vandy and I have done so far, she's got the message. She's afraid that it's going to go anywhere. But again, the truth has to be spoken. And we're so fortunate to know you, because when we do things like this, many times we're alone. And or at least we feel alone when we're doing things like this. And I've been in the business now for 52 years. And I still feel alone sometimes. I don't feel alone as I used to, but I know that together we can do anything. Guess what? We hold the future of the world, whether we're 74 or whether we're 24 with dozens of eggs coming in and into our body. It doesn't matter. We have that life-giving power. And I think that once we get together and make a bond, that bond cannot be broken except by the Creator. So that's my offer to you. Okay. You can certainly call me anytime you want. I don't care what time it is. I've got an ear and I've got a big mouth too. So, and I get punished for it more times than you ever know. But this is the kind of stuff this is brand new to me. Okay, some time ago, my sister had suggested that I get my own podcast. Okay, we just had a fight about it today, but I won't go into that. But it didn't take until Vandy was able to, bring it all together. All I have is a silly little phone I've got, and that's all I have. Well, now we've got airtime. It's being recorded. This whole thing is going to be in a library archive. It legitimizes what we're doing on a level we didn't think about before. And I think that we have to keep going. So I wish you happiness. I wish you finding the path that gives you heart. Only you will know that. Okay. And as they say, the robe fire is lit, and the robe is before you, welcoming you home. Home is more than just a geographic place. Going home. So keep going. Keep going, because you're on the right path. Haven't bloomed yet, but we're waiting. We're waiting for you to bloom. But there's movement there, I can tell. And you're going to go way past this. You're going to save people's lives. You're going to not just save your own, but who knows how many others. And the perpetrators will hopefully find their own healing. We have to find out what happened to them. What hurt them? We don't know. We don't walk in their shoes either. So when all is said and done, we have to forgive everything that's happened to us and the people that have done these things to us, for healing, love, learning how to love, learning how to live again. That's what this is all about. It's not white man's education that's going to get us there. It's traditional knowledge. Like, I want to know how to hunt, even at 74. I want to know how to preserve food. I want to know how we can organize to get our health clinics to provide traditional foods for the people wherever they're at. Find out what those traditional foods and give them out to the people for free. Here in Northern California, staple is acorn. And acorn is considered the most nutritious food in the world. Okay. And then pine nuts further north. And then, of course, strawberries here at the Western Door. Strawberries are my focus one too. Elk, deer, as meat. We're not vegetarians either. Traditional. We eat meat, and that's what gives us our relationships with our forelegs. So we need to. It's there. We just have to get it back. We can't do that until we heal. And you're doing a great job. So
Mm.
I give you my congratulations.
Thank you.
All my relations
Hmm.
have spoken.
Kaye, Wokula, Wewena, Auntie Susan. Natáyo, was there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up this conversation?
Gosh, I mean, Susan touched on so much going on within the Blackfeet Nation, and gosh, I could speak a lot about that. just with my own, experience, just since releasing my story. Gosh, I mean, after I released it, there was such good energy going forward that I thought was, we were going to be able to really have that momentum to move forward and create positive change. And so I was being told that the Honorary Women's Council wanted to meet with me, that there were spiritual leaders within the secret or the sacred societies that wanted to meet with me, and, that there were kind of different things in the works, to address this. And, throughout all of that, there was just I think the common theme that took place was just disunity. There was not enough unity within the community to really have any action take place, or really have it be sustainable. And so, I mean, there ended up being no meetings with the Honorary Women's Council or any of our leadership. And, even as I had, when I did have an advocate working on my case, she reached out to the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council to see how they were going to hold, their vice chairman accountable. And, no action was taken. They said that they would not be able to do anything unless charges were pressed. There were some community members that were ready to just go down to the tribal council headquarters themselves and show up and demand that they were held accountable and to confront them. And they went to tribal headquarters when they were holding their monthly general session, and their general session meetings are open to the public. And so it was their plan to go into this public meeting and confront them about this issue there. And they're supposed to have transparency and cameras and everything like that. And they must have caught wind, the council must have caught wind about that, because they ended up shutting down their tribal headquarters for the rest of that week. And so, those community members tried to continue keeping that momentum to go forward and find some accountability. But eventually it did get to the point where, they kind of shoved it off to the side and said, we're going to wait until Lily Gladstone Day is over. And that was when Lily Gladstone was returning to the reservation to receive her stand-up headdress. And, I was just talking with someone about the ceremony where she received her stand-up headdress. And there was a video, because somebody had brought it to my attention that Lauren Monroe Jr. was one of the people in the room as she received that honor. So that's something I'm going to be looking into as well. But you know, they put down $10,000 to put on Lily Gladstone Day, and in the middle of a community that is suffering. You know, to me, it was the most irresponsible thing that they could have done. And while ignoring this issue, you know, at the same time, you know, what another connection that I had made in exposing all of this was the spiritual corruption that's been taking place within one of our sacred societies, the Horn Society. And, you know, Susan, you had mentioned the Blackfeet up north in Canada. And what I've heard is, you know, we didn't have our ceremonies down south for a really long time. And these spiritual leaders in Canada did not feel that our people, our Blackfeet people in Montana, were ready for these responsibilities because we had a spiritual sickness. And the ceremonies and the rites for these sacred societies were brought down south. And I cannot exactly remember off the top of my head when they were brought down south. But in my experience with this Horn Society, you know, that's the sacred society that Lauren is a member of. And when I went to escape from him, one of the first people that I reached out to were the leaders of this Horn Society. And their names are Tyson Running Wolf, and his wife's name is Lana Running Wolf. And you know, I told them you know, what was going on, and I was still very afraid to really tell them everything. But when I did reach out to Lana to return to ceremony, because it was their ceremony that I had gone to, I specifically asked her, you know, how to ensure that I remained safe. And I never got a response back. And they're in support of him, you know, and there's a particular connection between the Horn Society and Tribal Council that the community members are very aware about, and they'll complain about, but nobody is challenging it openly. And there's supposed to be that separation between our spiritual leadership and our government leadership, our political leadership. But, you know, people know that there's, you know, Lauren, for instance, he's vice chairman and he's in the Horn Society, and that's not supposed to be the way. Not that I'm an expert, I'm not an expert at all, but I know that much. And people, it's kind of common knowledge, you know, to people that they know that if, you know, that if you want to be elected onto tribal council, you need to be good with the Horn Society. And so there's that spiritual corruption that's taking place. that I'm not afraid to talk about. And another thing that's being brought to light, that I had a little bit of experience in was what I'm just going to start calling the pass around culture that is taking place, where women in these powerful circles and societies are expected to give sexual service to the other men within the society as well. And it's being called, you know, a pass around. You've become a pass around. And that, you know, when I heard about that, it immediately was recognizable to me, because that's what Lauren was so obsessed with, was sharing me with other men and finding other men to rape me with him and to record me and to leave me with other men, just all of it, you know. And so there's this underbelly that is being exposed, and it is really hard for the Blackfeet community to look at. And, you know, they, I think, are almost paralyzed in that fear and the shock of it being exposed as well. There are a lot of elders that are ready to get up and do things, but at the same time, I think what I'm seeing is they don't know how. You know, they're in a place of still being in survival mode and still being so wounded that they don't know the way forward. And that's what I've been trying to really, you know, work with other people and just have discussions like this, where we're working towards the positive and trying to restore unity among the people, and so that we can return to our traditional values, because what's taking place within our community is not aligned with who we are as a people. And that disconnection from our spirit has just taken us away, so far away from the true nature and true spirit that we should be embodying. So I can really relate to the frustrations that you're bringing up, and I'm so thankful that you're talking about it, because people here are too afraid to talk about it. And I admire just your courage to not just even speak about it once and then move on. Like, I am so grateful for your words on this. And just, you know, we might not have it all right, but, you know, I'm on the outside as well. I'm on the outer ring of that community, so I don't know the inner workings. But if they're not going to talk about it, somebody has to. And if they don't want to be talked about, then they better start doing some inner work. They better start talking about it themselves.
Powerful. Thank you so much for giving us more insight into that. And as somebody who's been on the outside of communities my whole life, an orphan, I can say that this is absolutely destruction by design, and this isn't the only community going through this. I had coordinated an action down here to confront a Lakota predator who was raping young women in sweat lodges at music festivals, like hippie music festivals where they'd have ceremony. And all the warriors just kind of dispersed and just became bumbling anti-heroes in the moment at this event where we had the opportunity to confront him. So one of the AIM members that had kind of like backed down at the event, I saw him at an AIM meeting after that, and I went up to him and tried to have a conversation in a good way as to why everything fell apart. Like, let's assess this. Why was I the only one that turned my back on this man and everybody else shook hands with him, and I was the only one standing with my back turned? And what came out of him, and I'm not going to name his community because I'm not a part of that community. I'm a guest here in Tewa country, and it wasn't a Tewa community, it was another community. But he basically said, I don't know what to do anymore because even our own tribal council has passed a legislation to force us to allow convicted sexual predators into ceremony spaces. This is colonial rape culture. This comes from the Roman era and how they amassed empires. And it is a disconnect from the spirit. And the only ones that have the ability to speak truth to power are the women, because we are the life givers, like Auntie Susan said. We can't disconnect from spirit for that reason. We can, we can absolutely disconnect from spirit. But we have that option to reconnect. And when we do, there's no going back. And this, what I've learned from the Lakota grandmothers that share their wisdom with me is the colonizers depended on the men to steal our land. They depended on their egos for those trades or for whatever honors they were getting for that exploitation, because the trickster spirit depends on our ego and our freedom of choice, our free will to exploit them. So through rematriation, through having these brave conversations, through culture, reconnecting to culture, through conversation and through connection, the only way that we can unpack this. And no, maybe we don't do it all right, and maybe we definitely don't have all the answers, but like you said, through conversations like these, we discover answers, and someone else will hear this conversation and they'll have an answer, and then we invite more to the table. And it's not, we're not going to get the answers from the government, from the men, from the answers. I'm going to quote myself, I said it in the documentary Women of the White Buffalo, the answers are going to come from the hearts of the women, and we get those answers through these brave conversations.
Yes, Vandy, before we close, I forgot to mention to Natáyo that I had a dream last week. Our elder brother confirmed it, and it had to do with reptilian, these reptiles that I've never seen before. And I was in a house, and I didn't know why I was in the house, but there was 2 or 3 of them in there. And at first I thought I was there to kill them. But then I found out, no, I wasn't supposed to kill them. I was supposed to dispose of them. So I don't know whether I actually killed the first one or not. I'm not really sure. But I did dispose the 2 others that were there. And our elder brother confirmed that morning that it has to do with the Blackfeet Nation. So that's spiritual information that you're probably not going to get anywhere else. That contributes to what you have described as reptilian. It's young reptilian creatures I've never seen before. In fact, I actually felt the claw of one, and I asked Elder Brother, I said, do I have to worry about it? He says, no. And I wasn't afraid to, I wasn't afraid to remove them, but they were struggling pretty hard to stay in the house. And the house that they were staying in is the Blackfeet Nation. And I was there to dispose of them, and not to kill them, but dispose of them, because later on I found out from Vandy that these creatures are from inside her mother. And because of what's happened to her internally with fracking, gas and oil exploration, they've been forced to come to the surface. So they really are part of the earth. We are their relatives, but their place is inside our mother, not anywhere else. And so they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And I don't have that understanding as to what that means. But they're not supposed to be in the Blackfeet house or any other house. They're supposed to be back inside her mother. So we've got these reptilian creatures controlling people, and very likely Lauren's one of them. And whoever else knows. But I am going to get in touch with the Blackfeet people from Canada. We are going to share the information with them, and it won't be up to Vandy or myself to do anything except share information, present what we have, and it's going to be up to the Blackfeet people to heal themselves and to take care of business. And a lot of it has to do with not having the information, the tools that are necessary to actually look at it, feel it, heal from it, and then come back as a whole, complete human being. So I wanted to let you know about that. That's recent. That's like last week. So I'll be paying attention to it. In fact, I'll be talking to Elder Brother about those reptiles in the coming days. Thank you. Miigwech.
Wewina, before we close the conversation, just want to thank our sponsor, the Wakanesia Tatanka Oyate, the Buffalo Youth Program out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. They're the ones making this podcast possible. They do a lot of great things in their community, like providing fresh, healthy food and traditional foods and winter clothing to all the children in their community. So they're all about creating and bringing women together to make spaces better. So big thank you to them. And Rise and Love Foundation, we are grassroots. We don't get big grants. We are survivor and Indigenous led. We've been operating self-supporting small donors and micro grants since 2012. So that's a miracle in itself that the mission just keeps on going and keeps on growing. So if you feel called to support our work, you can donate. It is tax deductible. We have a fiscal sponsor, riseandlovefoundation.org. And we will include contact information. If anybody wants to get in touch with any of us, we'll include that in the description of the YouTube video. And I think that's it for the announcements. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting our work. Thank you both. I cannot thank you both enough for having the courage to have this brave conversation, because this is how change happens. And yes, with that, I'll close with a prayer. Wankanto, Takashila Wopila. Wewina, thank you for everything that is, everything that will be, and everything that was. Thank you for the blessings. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the tests. I pray for all of our healing, not just us as the first peoples of Turtle Island, but the water, the land, all of our relations, from the smallest grain of sand to the farthest star. And I pray that this podcast goes out to the people with the hearts and the open minds to hear it, and that they'll be called to step into their purpose so that we can continue to affect change and continue to, in the words of Sitting Bull, put our minds together so we can come up with a better future for the next generations. And with that, I close this ceremony of truth and pray for universal justice.
No.
Thank you both, and we'll convene and keep our conversations going. And if we need to have a fourth part to the podcast, we will. If we come up with new topics, we'll do that, and we'll just keep going. So thank you both. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk soon.
Can go, everyone.
Thank you, Anya.